Hey everyone, welcome to Playlist Parlay. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to share some exciting ways where you can get more involved with our community. You can visit our website at playlistparlay.com and join our Discord server. Discord is a free platform where you can chat with me, any of our amazing guests, and other fellow listeners. You can ask questions, book our guests for gigs or private lessons, and even participate in exclusive discussions. We also have a special channel on Discord just for our Patreon members. Patreon is a platform where you can support the show financially and in return, get access to exclusive content and perks. Our Patreon members help me put together the playlists for each episode, and their input is invaluable. So head on over to playlistparlay.com, join our Discord, and consider supporting us on Patreon to get even more involved. Let's make some great music together. Episode 4, The Essential Stevie Wonder with Kerry, Tweedy. Music by Marshall Henry. Hi everybody, welcome to Playlist Parlay. This is my guest for the week, Kerry, Tweedy, who is kind of a fixture here in Tuolumne County music scene for a lot of years. We were negotiating before we got on air about how many years we're going to say it was, but I think we've known each other at least 25.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I think that we first met out at Columbia College doing Columbia jazz stuff at about 96 or 97.
Yeah, that sounds right. And I think that's what a lot of people will probably remember me doing is a lot of work at Columbia College during the jazz series.
Okay. So you sang and then you did a lot of like box office work there for a lot of years, right?
Yeah, which was really great because I got to know the season ticket holders and the people that came to the shows and get to really see that side of it as well. But also the benefit of being in the choir and being on stage with the incredible artists that were part of it too. So that was pretty amazing.
Right on. So what other bands have you been associated with and involved in since the Columbia College days?
Yeah, so I did jazz for a long time and I hadn't really been in a band, and I moved away to Santa Rosa and happened upon this band that was looking for background singers. And I had a friend that I'd met who wanted to audition for them, so she brought me along, and they ended up taking me and not her. So it was a little bit of a strange situation, but it was the first band that I really fronted, and it was in Santa Rosa, and I did that for about 4 years. And then I moved back to Sonora, and I was in a little band that was just starting up called Chains Required.
Yeah, that's pretty well-known band in the area.
Yeah, so I was with Chains for about 4 years and then moved back to Santa Rosa again and sat in with the other band that I'd been part of before. We got together a few more times again. And then, I moved back to Sonora again. And when I came back here, became part of a band called Stomp Box.
Right.
And we did that band for about 4 or 5 years. COVID took us down for about a year. And then we broke up for a while, and I wasn't going to do music for a while. And then all of a sudden it just kind of fell together again. And a couple of the guys that I was in Stomp Box with, we got together and formed a band called Zero Gravity. So that's the project I'm in now that we're out performing. And we haven't even been together performing for a year yet. It'll be a year in July.
That's great that you're out doing it. And you're playing with one of my favorite bass players up here is Dan Ward.
Oh my gosh, isn't he amazing?
He's an amazing guy. Like I like hanging out with him. I met him playing just a pickup gig with Leilani. And I didn't know him. Had never talked to him before. And we didn't even really talk like before the gig. Like it was just kind of a get in, rush in, plug in, start playing. And about the third song, we're looking at each other kind of going, yeah, you know what's going on. I keep reaching out to like get him other gigs. And he's like, I can't. He's just got so many commitments because he's a high demand bass player.
He is.
And really one of my favorite guys to be playing with up here. And I'm glad he's come to the area because he's not originally from here.
No, and he's played with great people, and he's so modest he won't really tell people. But he's played with some pretty big name acts in the past, and he's from the Bay Area, moved up here, and thank goodness Lauren, who's our drummer in our band, spotted him and got him because he is just one of the kindest and one of the most talented guys I've ever met. And it's so funny. We were in Stomp Box together, and I always knew he was a great bass player. always knew it. I could hear him doing stuff, but we had a 5-piece. Now that we're in a 4-piece, it opens up so much space for him to be even more creative and showcase what he can do. And so I'm always going, hey, Dan, you want to take a solo? Hey, Dan, you want to do a little thing? But even sometimes when I'm just singing and he's doing some funky line behind something, I just like start smiling.
He's just such a tasteful player.
He is. And he hears it and he just puts stuff in and you're like, dang, that was so good.
Yeah, I haven't actually reached out to him about doing this show, but I kind of hope he'll take me up on it because I think he'd be he's been doing it so long and clearly understands music at such a high level that I'm sure whatever band he's into, he's going to really be into, and it's going to be a great talk. And so the rest is Zero Gravity. I know all these guys in this band. I've peripherally worked with all of them, and they're all great guys. So Lauren Kaiser, is your drummer, and he is just a sweet guy. The last good interaction I had a drum student during COVID. Then because he was a high school, I think he would have been a freshman at the time. Because he was home all week, his dad said, hey, I don't think we should do drum lessons just because he's home all week and you can kind of go and check in. I'm just good friends with his dad. And we got into it for a little bit and then we needed a drum set. And Lauren had this really, really nice Gretsch set that he was going to let go for half of what it was worth used, like half of the used value.
Right.
And so I remember him really helping me and that family out by letting this young man have a very nice first starter drum set at a very affordable price. And that was just, I remember that kindness. And every time I see the guy, he's got a smile on his face and a handshake ready to happen and good player and nice guy. And then your last guy is Don, right? Don
Anderson, yeah. On guitar. He was the one who actually started the band Hired Gun up here.
Right.
And then he decided he was going to take a break. And part of this is, like Don loves to go climb rocks and ride his bike off mountains ridiculoely fast.
Yeah, he's a pretty aggressive, athletic guy.
He is. And Lauren started doing that too. So I always tell him, like, have fun, guys, but don't break an arm.
Yeah, right.
I need you to play for the gig, right? But I think that's the greatest thing. They're good musicians. We're having a lot of fun doing this, but they're just all such great people. And when you're in a band with people that are that nice, and I've been really fortunate. Every band I've been in, I've been in with just such amazing people. And I know that's not always the case. I hear stories, but I feel really fortunate to be in a band with people that are so kind and so generous of heart. Like Don is a physical therapist and he's always willing to help people out with stuff. Lauren is a mechanic. He's always willing to help. Dan just will do like anything, I mean, they're just nice guys.
Well, we talked a little bit before we started recording about the aspects of being a front person, which is unique to you. I never experienced that. I'm always at the back behind a kid.
It's amazing. You should try it.
Yeah. And I think I'd be terrified. But the thought of even going to a gig and getting on the front person's microphone and making an announcement is still terrifying to me because I like having my little barrier of drums in front of me. And I'm very seldom have a vocal microphone. In fact, with Grover's band, we have a running sort of joke about how I've been on microphone restriction because I make inappropriate comments, which is not entirely untrue, but we kind of keep the joke alive.
Right.
But even having my voice amplified is a little bit terrifying. But then I started doing this podcast and I'm completely comfortable because I guess maybe because no one's actually watching me. They're just listening to ideas. And it's so there's a lot of this interactivity thing. And the point I was very, very roundabout trying to make here is that there's a performance aspect to music.
Yeah.
You can go in and play the songs and rehearse and know exactly what you're doing and keep it on rails and have a very good execution musically. But the performance is what sells a band as being good.
Right.
More so than the music, quite frankly. A good performance can have, pretty B- C+ musical performance. But if the energy's right, people are going to walk away thinking it's the best thing they ever saw.
Right.
And the inverse, if you've got an A+ technical, it went exactly the way it was supposed to. There were no errors, but it was a real dry performance. People are going to walk away going, and so to me, losing the audience makes us suffer because it's really hard to give a good performance to 10 people, especially when you know all of them.
Right.
It's kind of like, it's a little bit disingenuous. because they've already seen you perform. They became a fan. They're here because they've seen you do it and they like you. But when they're the only ones sitting in that audience, it's a little disingenuous to kind of keep that high energy for them. It's almost like, yeah, you're my old friend. And it's, I don't know. It's hard to give the performance I think I would want to give to familiar audiences.
I'm going to flip that for you a little bit because I think it can go both ways. And I think that's the thing about being a front person. You have that responsibility. And the thing that I think helps me be comfortable with it is that when I get up there and I'm on that mic, it's not about me. I'm there to make sure that everybody out there is having a good time. Right? That's my job. I am the conduit between the audience and the band. And I tell people this all the time. Not everybody can play an instrument, but everybody can sing. They may not be good, but they can do it. So the fastest way to connect with a band is through the singer. Because
that makes sense.
I can do it, so I understand it, right? You see someone with an instrument in their hand and you don't really understand how they're making that sound, or like it looks really intimidating. So it takes a while to warm up to the instrumentalist. And then you get the guys that, do know how to play a little, and then they like think they are rock stars and they're like staring at the guitar player the whole night, right?
Right.
But I think as the front person, it is your job. And so for me, it's always been easy to levy that by saying it's not about me at that moment. I'm really here to make sure they're having a good time. And if they're having a good time, I'm going to have a good time. And if I release myself to that, it's okay. So if I don't know the audience, I'm working hard because I'm trying to notice things about them that are going to make me be able to connect and feel familiar. It could be someone's wearing a hat from a sports team that I like, and I could easily like say something about it because, hey, if I see a Niners fan in the crowd, I'm going to spot it out because like those are my boys, right? But it could also be it's all these people that I know, so it's already like I'm with my family. And not only have you heard the song before, but I'm going to try to do something a little different in it, or I might make you part of it in a different way, or I'm going to go like, here's that part you like. If you've told me something that you like about a performance that we've done, I'm going to go, hey, Bob, don't go anywhere because we're going to do that part that you like next, And so you learn to keep it fresh with even people that it may not feel fresh with, because every experience we have with somebody, you and I have known each other off and on for years, right?
Sure.
This is a fresh experience for us. So It could be boring and we could just go like, hey, yeah, good to see you. But it's not. We can find new things to talk about or talk about the surrounding that we're in. Every experience is new, and you just have to remember that. So even if it's the same old song, the same old whatever, there's a way to make it fresh if you want to.
I think it's really insightful, the idea that everyone can sing and they just may not be as good at it.
Not everyone gets paid for it, Josh, but everyone can do it.
Everyone can do it. But you put a guitar in everyone's hand and they don't even really like understand how it works a lot of times. And so that's really insightful to me. And I haven't thought about that as a front person because I'm if you can't tell from my talking voice, I'm not much of a vocalist.
You have a nice talking voice. What are you talking about?
Well, there's a reason that I play drums though. But I think that's really insightful. And it's something that I completely missed in my analysis of what I was just talking about, is that I don't know how to invite people in like that. Like I didn't think about how I could do that, but you're right. If you can just get them to sing with you, if you're singing a song that they know and you can, with your presence, invite them to sing with you, they're in.
Oh, yeah. Every show, at least 4 or 5 times I'm going, okay, you guys ready to sing? Or you sing along, dance. I don't care if you dance in your chairs. Like when we played the park last week, it was warm, it was humid. People weren't dancing as much as we were used to. And I just gave the audience permission. I said, you know what? I know it's hot out here tonight. I don't care if you're dancing in your chairs, if you're singing along, as long as you're having a good time. And the crowd started clapping. Like, it's just having that awareness, that situational awareness of like, I get it. You may not want to be up dancing because it's hot. I'm not going to be offended because you weren't up sweating your behind off to make me feel better.
Well, let's dig into it. Do you have anything else you want to talk about from an interview and what you have going on in the community right now? Or do you want to dig into Stevie Wonder?
Oh, gosh, just to say that I'm really having a great time with our band, Zero Gravity. And one of the reasons that I'm having so much fun, and it's a little different than other bands I've been in, we're doing a wide variety of music. And this is what I would say, too. Know your thing that you want to do. Some people like to do cover bands that do like one style of music. I've always been someone that's listened to a very wide gamut of music. And so I'm having the most fun of my life, I think, with being able to sing everything from Bob Marley to Billy Squier to Chris Stapleton right now. I mean, like it's crazy just getting to do all those different things. And just anybody that's listening out there that wants to do music, do what you love. Just do what you love and try to find some other people that want to do that kind of music with you, because you can find them. I used to think it was hard. It's not. You can find people that want to do something similar. So
do you do any vocal coaching or voice lessons? Is that something you've done up here?
no, I've had no formal training, but it's kind of funny. I did have someone ask me to meet with singers a long time ago and do some coaching with them on stage presence and also just kind of how I sing. And I did. And that little group of people that I worked with talk about it to me like on a regular basis when I run into them or see them. They always go back and go, that was so fun. That was so great to do. And again, that's something where I've never felt like I was qualified to do because I don't know how to sing properly as far as that. But I do think that I have something to give and to tell people how to really sing from your heart, how to sing from what feels good, how to listen to the music and know where to vocalize at certain points. And remember that you're not just a singer, you are an instrument. And I think a lot of singers forget this too. I love to be able to sing rhythmically. I'm one of the rhythm instruments at times. I'm popping in little like things that are like, it's a rhythm thing. It's not some melody that I'm doing. It's a rhythm thing. And to me, that's really important. And that's the style singer I am. But I think that's because that's the kind of voice that I have. I don't have the voice that can do all those other acrobatics. So that's not what I've focused on.
I think it's a vocal quality that's often missed too.
Yeah.
I think that you get vocalists who are lyric first, pitch second, or the other way around. And then, add dynamics, and then add vocal control things. But rhythm is often kind of like a distant fifth or sixth element, I think, for a lot of vocalists. It's interesting that you rate your rhythmic acuity highly, because I think a lot of vocalists do not.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know that I'm great at it, but it's something that I kind of try to focus on. I love to be able to do that. And so when we rehearse, I record myself at every rehearsal. I record the band when we're rehearsing, and I listen back to that because I try stuff out. And I'll hear something, and sometimes I'll hear how they're playing it, and I'm like, oh, ooh, I could do this right there, and that would be cool. I'm going to phrase it a little different. I'm going to go a little faster with this and then give myself a gap here because I want to give more accent to this word or this. And that's a rhythmic thing. It's a punchiness. It's not just like I'm a storyteller as a singer, but there may be a certain part of the story that I want to stick out a little bit more or have you feel, because people don't always even hear the words, but they'll feel it. And so if I can emote it with my voice and with my actions and where I'm doing that stop, start, and that accent on the note, that makes a difference. And there's been plenty of times where I've hit a not pretty note because I'm going with my emotion and I'm leading with it. But you know what? I'm forgiving myself for that now too, because I've had a lot of fun singing. And I think that's important, and that comes through to the audience. You don't have to be perfect. Be real.
Well, I'd like to also kind of point out that a lot of popular American musicians, especially the songwriters of the generations, they didn't get taught how to do it either.
Right.
They're innovators because they weren't taught. When you're sort of taught, well, this is how we do this. This is how you hold your sticks, and this is how you vocal control, and this is how you should warm up, and you should be doing this, and you should be doing that. Well, if you've got so much training to do things a very specific way, how do we explain all these 19 to 24-year-olds that are making these huge splashes? Are they really learning that much from the time they're 7 or 8 to they're 19? Or are they creative and they have enough background to do it, but they're not doing it like everybody else? And that's what makes them innovative.
Yeah.
And that makes me, having listened to you for years as a vocalist, think that you have a lot to offer as a vocal coach. That it doesn't matter what the training is. Somebody else can teach that. They don't need a one stop to get all kind of thing.
Right. And
I've learned that because I still take drum lessons from people, especially online. I love the community of online drum lessons through Zoom, and we all just pass the same $50 bill around each other, But it's really cool that we just kind of take turns and go, hey, I'm really having a hard time figuring out how this groove was. Can you sit down and show me? And, that networking thing is really good.
That's awesome.
But I think, 5 drummers in a room doesn't work, but 5 vocalists in a room does. Yes. And I think that for the middle school Connections Academy, high school kids up here that are learning or trying to become better vocalists, reaching out to you would be something worth their time if it was something you were interested in doing.
Oh my God, I would love it. And you may have just sparked something new for me. So,
well, I think it's there, and you've got the credibility and the resume to back it up.
Well, thank you. And truly what we're talking about, it's funny because it leads right into the Stevie Wonder.
I agree.
Because the first time I ever heard Stevie Wonder really, it wasn't the first time I heard him, but the first time I really listened to him was when I was about 10 years old. And it was when Songs in the Key of Life came out. And I had never really heard anything quite like that before. Growing up here, there wasn't a lot of that on the radio up here, right? But my mom, God bless my mom exposed me. She was my best music teacher that I've ever had, truly, because she exposed me to so much music at a young age that one of my music teachers used to go, how do you know the lyrics to all this stuff? And I'm like, because it was on in my house. It was on in the car. My mom had music on all the time. And my mom had a hard time hearing the tone. She was a little bit tone deaf, so she didn't really sing on key, which could be really difficult sometimes, but she loved it so much. And I think that sparked the love and the joy for me too. And it was how we connected. But when I heard Stevie, I realized your voice doesn't have to be pretty. It can be powerful. It can be soft. It can be nasally. It can be all these sounds, but they all worked with what he was doing because for that moment and that direction he was going musically, that's what fit. You didn't want, oh, that wasn't what you wanted. You wanted like, na, 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 na. You wanted something that was just a different sound. And so that's what I love about Stevie. And I had actually picked a different artist when you asked me to do this. And I thought, oh, I love this one artist because asking me to pick one, really difficult, right?
Sure.
But I had one in mind that I thought, I bet a lot of people don't know about this artist and it'd be great to introduce people to this artist. And I kept thinking about it. And then it just kept hitting me. And I'm like, I really need to dig deep and go back to where it really started for me and why my love of music went in the direction it did. And I became such a fan of R&B, and it's because of Stevie Wonder. And he's been a thread through my entire life.
Yeah. Stevie Wonder, is really interesting to me because not a lot of people know this, but he almost performed everything on his albums in the mid 70s. He did have some drummers and some other instrumentalists, but only on specific tracks. Most of that stuff, Stevie played everything.
Yes.
He had such an understanding of how the drum part and the bass player, the bass part and the piano part and the vocal part and the horn parts and the little tambourine and the little bit of shaker that he'd layer in all functionally worked together. And I wonder if he was like this great experimentalist, like he sat there and just tried it this way and then tried it that way. And he listened and just goes, that's the one. Or if he just was like a Mozart and he just knew.
So yeah, I'm so glad you said that because to me, he is not a singer-songwriter. He is a contemporary composer.
Right.
He is a Mozart. He is a Bach. He is all of that. It's just in this time setting. I think if he had been born back then, he would be the person that we would be looking at these incredible, just arias and different composing of music from. But he's our time. And how lucky are we? And it's horrible that he lost his sight. He was born premature, and I think a lot of people don't realize that he was born premature. And because of some things that happened when he was a baby, that's why he lost his sight. He had retina detachment.
Right.
And so I think because not having that sense, I have this thing in my head where it's my little fantasy that he just hears the world different. And I feel like he hears it in color. Like we see in color, I feel like Stevie Wonder hears in color. He hears all these vibrant things and things that we can't even hear. Because when you start listening to his music, you hear like the basics, right? And I think this is the thing too. A lot of listeners don't listen that deep. They listen superficial, right? But when you cue them in on it, and that's our job as musicians too, right? And that's what this podcast is about. We're cueing you in on what to listen for the next time you hear these songs. And you're going to hear it in a different way because you're going to hear those layers. You're going to go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize what the bass was doing back there.
Right.
I didn't realize the bass and the keyboard were doubled. And that's why it's making that sound. I didn't realize that was a harmonica.
Right.
You know, I mean, like Stevie's known for starting out as a harmonica player, you know, like that was such a big thing for him when he started out, like being a keyboard player, being a harmonica player. Fingertips, his first real big hit when he's 13 years old.
Right.
13. And it's crazy, but
I think he's still the youngest individual to chart on the billboards.
He is.
Still, like, and that was...
And the only person to hold three Grammys from consecutive albums.
Wow.
So he won in 74 and 75 for Best Album. And in 76, Paul Simon won. And Paul Simon, when he gave a speech, said, "I just want to thank Stevie Wonder for not putting out an album this year."
Well, and I think he has 25 total Grammys.
25 Grammys, yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. So he's one of four. There are only four that have, I think it's Taylor Swift has joined the crowd now, right? So Taylor Swift and Stevie, I think Frank Sinatra, and oh my gosh, I can't remember the other one. There's only four of them that have had 3 Album of the Year Grammys. So it's just amazing that, and he's still doing music. That's what's crazy. The man's 74 and he's still doing music.
Right.
You know, and so we'll get a little deeper into it, but you know, you talked about Prince and people like that. He's collaborated with so many people over the years. It's crazy, but he had this great bass player, and the bass player even said, like, yeah, you know, like Stevie and I worked together for like 4 years on 4 different albums, but he still, when he got in the studio, he recorded my tracks. So Stevie used the tracks that he recorded rather than the bass player, because I think he just hears it in a different way, you know? Someone else like that, I think John Coltrane, when he went off into Ascension and stuff.
Sure, yeah.
The man hears differently, and it's kind of like dog hearing. I'll never hear it that way because I love jazz, and I try to listen to Ascension, and I'm just like, I don't get it. You know, I can't get there.
Sure. I just think that it's really wild to think about someone who can understand all the different parts. And then specifically for me, for Stevie, to think about how unconventional those parts are.
Yes.
It's not like he understands how a drum groove goes and then wrote to it. He understood something in the middle that I can't even understand what he understood, and then wrote parts to support that. And if you isolate the drum track and isolate the bass track, they don't make a lot of sense.
No.
But they sure work.
They do. And that's what players that have played with him over the years have said. Like, it's kind of chaos. You know, like there's things happening in that recording where he's doing Fingertips when he's like 13 years old. He's playing it, but then he does this encore and he keeps going, right? And they say, you know, you can hear the bass player saying, "What key? What key?" You know, he's not even sure where Stevie's gone at this point, but it all makes sense. And so that's what I think is so wild, is that he creates all these layers, and we don't, like, you can appreciate his music over and over again. And that's what makes an incredible artist, an incredible musician that lasts over time. You can keep listening to it and hear new things. But so I don't know if you want to kind of start to delve into the songs.
Yeah, so let's do that. So the way I usually do it is I go first so that you get the last word.
Okay.
So I'll start with my number 10.
Okay.
Which is "Isn't She Lovely?" Which
Great
is
song.
Yeah. And I'm afraid I'm going to end up with a reputation on the show for not picking enough ballad type tunes and love tunes, because I'm not, as a listener, as a music appreciator, I'm not a lyrics guy. I never really have been. I focus on groove and interesting musical changes. That's what draws me into tunes. This is a good love tune.
Oh.
And it's so obvious that it is, that's kind of what drew me to it. And part of it may be a little bit of guilt. I don't want to have that reputation, but I also think this is a fantastic tune.
Now you know who it's about, right?
No, I don't know who it's about.
It's about his daughter.
Okay.
So it was when his daughter was born. He wrote this about his daughter. "Isn't she lovely? Isn't she wonderful?" Less than a few minutes old. I mean, like, so it's about his daughter, but it is a love song for sure.
Yeah.
And it feels like it could be about someone that you're in romantic love with too, because to think like, "Isn't she lovely?" Like, to feel that. And that's what I think Stevie's so great at with his romantic songs too, is that you do feel that. And we'll touch on that with some of the ones that I've chose, but this is such an incredible song. And I was hoping you'd pick it because I couldn't pick all of them, right? I could only pick 10. And so I was trying to like be sparing.
So what's your number 10?
So mine is called "Overjoyed." And it's a song that he did in the 80s. And I didn't really cue into it then. I cued into it years later. when I was hosting a Sunday morning jazz brunch here in town, because I did that for 3 years. I used to be on the radio, and I was very fortunate that my program director didn't wake up on Sunday mornings until after my show. So I really got to program my show myself, and that's unheard of because usually they pick all the music for you. You just play it. And there was a certain amount of CDs that were in the station that you could use. And so I'd go through them and try to find some gems, but I was also bringing in a lot of my own music. Well, one of the gems I found was this CD by Freddie Cole covering Overjoyed by Stevie Wonder. So Stevie does it, and he does it in this certain way, and it's very fluid. It was actually written, I think, in 79 and didn't end up on an album until 81. They didn't put it on the original release, and you'll like this part. Stevie's the singer, the keyboard player, the background singer, and he does environmental percussion.
So what is environmental percussion?
Environmental percussion is crickets and bird chirping and bird noises.
Okay.
And so that's part of the song. And it's actually the part of the song that I didn't care for as much on Stevie's version, which is, I feel a little bad. Sorry, Stevie, but I'm not going to like everything all the time. But I still love the song. It's a pretty song, but the tempo he does it and everything, it's good. But I would implore people to go listen to Freddie Cole, who is Nat King Cole's brother.
Okay.
He performs this, and he does it on an album called I'm Not My Brother, I'm Me, which is, love the title, right? Clever title. But Freddie Cole's sounds a lot like his brother. They've got that same resonance. So it's that beautiful, rich baritone voice that Nat has. And he does it jazz style, and there's this gorgeous jazz guitar intro on it. And he slows it down, and he almost speak talks and sings part of it. And it just changes the way that you hear the words. And I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so gorgeous. Like, isn't that the Stevie Wonder song? Like, and I remember like having to go back and listen to it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, good song. But like, man, this version really gets me. Now, a ton of people have covered it.
Sure.
I mean, like Stanley Clark's covered it, like a ton of people. Mary J. Blige has covered it. Celine Dion's covered it. But I'm telling you, this Freddie Cole version is just, the guitar player on it, just so tasteful and just beautiful jazz guitar tone. And it's just really, the way it's presented is just gorgeous.
It's a really interesting song melodically.
Yes.
It doesn't kind of go where you'd expect it to.
No.
And I think that's probably why so many other artists are interested in having a musical opinion by re-recording it, because it's, if you tried to write something else that used that trick, it would sound like you're ripping it off, I think.
Yeah.
So why do that? Just re-record it with your flair, with your flavor. It's just an interesting melodic trick.
Oh, the melody steps up and steps up again. And if you're trying to sing it, like I'll go around the house singing a cappella all the time. It's just what I do. It's my therapy.
So we'll go on. My number 9, I picked a cover. I did Sunny, which is one of my favorite tunes.
Yeah, me too.
Just like all time. I think Sunny's a fantastically written tune. It's got a catchy groove. It's got a catchy little melody. And I think Stevie Wonder does one of the best versions of it.
Oh, yeah. And Josh, I'm proud of you. It's a love song.
It is, but it doesn't feel like a love song.
Why? Because love can feel like that. Love can feel sunny and bright and happy.
That's true.
The words, everything, the way it's put together, love that song. And Stevie does do a great version of it. So yes, agreed.
Yeah.
My number 9, you have it over there?
I'm getting there. Go ahead. Do you know what it is?
I believe it's So What the Fuss.
That's what I have.
Yes. I picked this one because it is one of his more recent ones. It's in the 2000 years, right? And actually, En Vogue is on it, doing some backgrounds, and Prince is in it.
Right.
And I love that he goes, "Go, Prince." You know, there's a part where he
Good
actually
call out stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And, I love Prince, so he was so amazing. And it's just a really cool song. And it's about, I love the meaning behind it because it's just a really fun and a quirky way to talk about something that's kind of serious in a sense, but make it like, what are you making a big deal about this? Like, so what the fuss? And it's got this great funk beat to it that is just off the hook.
Yeah.
And so I love that he's talking about, if the alarm doesn't go off and I'm late for work, shame on me. So he does this shame on me, shame on you, shame on them, shame on us. So what the fuss? So it's like, if you want things to change, then get up and make a change. Be part of the positive change. Quit complaining about everything and be more inclusive rather than exclusive in this life, because we're all here together. And that comes from, I think, stems from still an accident that he had years ago, where it really awakened him to humanity and life in a different way. And I think that forever changed a lot of the music that he did. And he was always trying to make some kind of social statements. And I think this makes a social statement, but it's so sly in the way it does it that you don't even realize it. Like, it's just saying to you, like, hey, this went wrong, so what the fuss? So
right. Yeah. I mean, I used to work in group homes, and one of the guys I worked with, he used to made an interesting statement to me about, are you satisfied with your life? And I said, well, I guess not. He said, well, what are you doing to change it? And I thought, well, nothing really actively. He's all, well, then you must be satisfied. Like, the logical conclusion is, if you're complacent and all you're doing is complaining, that still is satisfaction. You know, to really be dissatisfied requires action.
it requires change.
Right. It requires, some kind of participation in changing the situation. And that's what this song reminded me of, is that conversation I had with Michael, probably 15, 20 years ago now. Real wise older guy that I worked with. And that was what he had said, is this whole idea of, you know, if you're dissatisfied with your life, but you're not doing anything to create change out of that situation, then you are satisfied.
Right.
You know, and, you know, simply the fact that you're complaining about it does not eliminate your satisfaction.
Right. Yeah. If it was really bothering you, if you're that dissatisfied, you do something.
Right.
So this song is just a easy way to say do something. But the other thing that I love in it is the vocal triplets that Stevie does are just amazing too. And try as I may, can't get there.
Yeah, he's another one who's he's a complete vocalist.
Yes.
I mean, from pitch to tone to rhythm to lyrics as a songwriter.
To percussion.
Well, yeah, I mean, and
vocal percussion. Yeah.
But then also the fact that he's just such a multi-instrumentalist.
Yes.
And then never shied away from technology.
No.
Every time there was a new toy that could be used musically, he was one of the first to record with the new toy. Right.
And I'll never remember the names of any of them, but they showed a picture in one of these things I was looking at, and it was the first one to come out, and Stevie had it, and it had Braille on it, so Stevie could operate it.
Oh, wow.
And I was like,
was it a clavinet?
No, it was a type of 4-track
like a
digitizer.
Recorder.
It was. Okay. Yeah, and this is where I lose. So everyone out there listening, I'm not as technically qualified behind the mic as I am at relating with the audience. But it was just incredible to think, like, even though I know he's blind, like, it never occurred to me, like, the equipment, how does he run it? And the fact that it was done in Braille, and it's like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
He never let it be a barrier. And that's incredible.
And I don't think he let the amount of extra time that it probably took him in his life to master the things he mastered. And I've never felt like it let him suffer as a human being any other way, too. No. Every interview, every message and lyric just seems like, you know, he seems like a pretty good guy. You know, he seems like a pretty well-rounded guy who's here to share his gifts and encourage and participate. And it was never really about fame or wealth or anything like that for him. It was about
purpose seemed clear from the get-go.
Yeah.
8 years old in the church choir in Detroit. 3 years later, signs a contract with Motown.
Right. Yeah.
Come on. 11 years old, signing a contract with Motown.
And he was already blind at that point, too. I mean, that's, you know, because you said it earlier, but I mean, just as a reference point, this young man was for probably all of his memory, I can't imagine, because he went blind really young.
Well, he was blind as a baby, but he wasn't born blind. It was after he was born, because he was a preemie.
Right.
And he had retinal detachment. So when he was in the incubator, like, that's when it happened. But it wasn't like he was just born and...
Well, does he have any memory of his childhood being sighted?
He didn't have sight during his childhood.
Right. So he's also dealing with that. So to accomplish what he accomplished at 8, 13, right, you know, in his 20s during the 70s, is so remarkable given what he had to overcome. And at basically one of the highest levels in American music.
Oh, yeah. I think he was 25 when he had the back-to-back Grammys for Album of the Year. When you look at the age, you look at what he's done and you're like, oh, and then you're like, oh, he was 18. Oh, he was 21. Oh, he was 25. It's like, what was I doing at 25? It certainly wasn't that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, that's when you know someone was just truly meant and they stayed on course. They knew where their destination was going, not where they'd end, but where they were going, and they just stayed the course.
Well, and I think that has a lot to do with training our young people to have good self-awareness, to understand what their good qualities are and encourage and support them digging into those things.
Yes. And he had a very supportive mother.
He did. And you know, and as a community member, I hope that we all do that and see that in our youth and, you know, try to not mold them after our own expectations, but let them encourage them to do what they're good at, even if it's out of our own wheelhouse.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So my number 8 was Livin' for the City. And this is interesting too, because my background with this song is not from a Stevie Wonder recording, but when I was probably 12 years old and still listening to a lot of vinyl records, maybe I was even younger, I was probably only about 11, I ended up getting Maynard Ferguson's Chameleon album on vinyl. And on the Chameleon album, they did a big band Maynard Ferguson screaming trumpet version of Livin' for the City.
Wow.
And I thought that this is the greatest. It was my favorite cut on the record. And I had no idea it was a Stevie Wonder song for years.
Oh my gosh.
Until I heard Stevie's like come on the radio, or like I was at a club or something. I just heard it and like, that's a Stevie Wonder tune. I had no idea. But so for me, I learned this song completely without lyrics.
Wow.
I only heard it for the melody and loved it. And then I really heard the lyrics and heard what the story was about. I was like, oh, this is even better.
Right.
You know, but so that's my background with that particular tune is it was another person who, you know, back in, God, that album probably came out in 72 was when it was released. I probably got my hands on it in like 91.
Wow.
But that's my background of this particular song was from the Maynard Ferguson Orchestra playing Livin' for the City. And yeah, it's a great tune. It definitely has just a connection with me of from a nostalgia point of view. But it's just a fantastically written tune and a fantastic lyrics.
Oh, absolutely. And how amazing that it stood up so much even without the lyrics. The music of it was so incredible that you were able to hear that, you know, on the instrumental version. But yeah, this one, it was really hard not to put this one on my list because it gets in there with the groove also. It's just such a great driving beat. And then when he gets to that chorus and he starts singing it, and then the choir comes. I mean, like there's just so many incredible parts to it.
Yeah. So that puts us at your number 8.
I'm slowing it down again. So my number 8 is a love song, but it's a tragic love song. And usually you hear about cheating where like the man cheats on the woman, but this was about a woman cheating on a man. And when I heard this song, you know, Jodeci did a cover of it back in the 90s, and they actually, I think, took it to number 1. I don't think Stevie got it to number 1 on the U.S. Charts, but he did get it on the charts, but I don't think it got quite as high as Jodeci's. And I remember loving the Jodeci version, but when I went back and listened to Stevie again years later, I was like, man, the Jodeci was okay. And I was in that kind of like poppy boy band era where I was tuned into some of that. But when you go back and listen to the original, it's so much better. And this song just gets me. The very opening line is, lately, I've had the strangest feeling with no vivid reason here to find. And he's talking about how she starts wearing perfume more. And when he asks her where she's going, she won't say. Right. And I remember like it flipped it for me because as a woman, you always hear about men cheating on women. And like this was a woman cheating on the man. And I remember just feeling like, I feel so sorry for him. Like, how sad is this? And it was just to realize that we're all human and it happens to everybody. So again, I think that's what music does. It talks about things that happen to everybody. And sometimes we think that experiences are exclusive to us.
Yeah, this is a song that I wasn't really familiar with. When I listened to it and got your list a couple days ago and was listening, like, I don't think I really know this tune. I don't remember it being on the radio. I don't remember it really having a lot of exposure. I've certainly heard it before, but I'm not very familiar with it. And you're right. It's a great story. And one of the things about Stevie that I find interesting is he doesn't shy away from controversial social topics. But he engages with them in a way that I find is very non-confrontational. And that again speaks to just the genius of him as a songwriter, as a lyricist, that he's able to kind of address something from a different perspective, social injustice stuff in other songs.
Right.
But you don't walk away feeling like he was up on a soapbox. That's a real tough thing to do. Because even in this podcast right now, I've kind of like had some opinions. And when you have opinions, it's kind of like, okay, how do I share my opinion without trying to tell you to do what I want?
Right.
Because all I want to do is express how I feel.
Right.
And I think that as a songwriter, he's really just brilliant at that, of having an opinion, inviting you to engage with his opinion without demanding you agree.
Yeah. It's like he presents the topic and lets you go, here's the information. What are you going to do with it? You know, and the thing I love about this one too is it is a subtle song. I mean, there's others that he's written that, like, there's another one that I absolutely love and I'm not going to mention it because it might be on your list. But it's the way he, at the end of this song, like, it starts off so soft and so subtle, and it's just, he weaves his way through it, right? And then at the end, he really starts to build, and the lyric is how you start to cry. He's actually singing the words start to cry, and his voice gets so powerful at that moment, and the music starts to build, but it's not overbearing, but it's in a way that your chest, you were already feeling kind of like, and it just kind of goes, oh, you know, and you feel it. You feel like the emotion get intense, and that's what music is, right? It's awesome. Music's amazing.
It really is. And then you know, the curious side of me always wants to go back to know, like, how many takes did that take? Did he do that the first time? Does he know what he's trying to make you feel so well with that part that he can just go do that? Or did he try 15 times to get the right one? Because I don't know. I mean, and I don't have an expectation which one it is. But I think live performance is where we determine that. Right. You know, when you see someone live, you go to that concert and you can still get that feeling about a specific thing in a lyric, and they can pull that off live when it's hot and the food truck didn't arrive and they didn't pick out the green M&Ms and from the writer, you know, and all the little goofy things that might be upsetting him in the moment, but the performer can still get you there emotionally. Makes me think they're one-take wonders in the studio. Exactly. So I think that puts us at my number 7. Is that right?
Yeah, hit me with it.
So it's Master Blaster Jammin'. You know, when I first heard this, because my dad used to listen to a lot of Bob Marley when I was a boy, and I listened to it. And the first time I heard this, I kind of thought it was almost like almost a tongue-in-cheek ripoff of reggae, because it's like kind of Motown reggae. It's like, it's not really... It's
reggae pop.
Right. And I almost didn't take it seriously for a lot of years. I kind of thought, nah, this is, you know, it's not the same. And I understood that it's a tribute to Bob Marley, what the tune's about. But I didn't take it very seriously until probably the last 5 or 6 years, when I sort of started re-listening to a lot of Bob Marley again. And then this song came up in my sort of research of Bob Marley. And I thought, no, it's very serious. And it's purposefully reggae pop. It's purposefully Stevie Wonder not copying, but being influenced by what that music was all about. And then lyrically, he's even justifying it. Just, I don't know. It's tough for me to have a strong opinion on a lot of things that in my life don't really affect me. Right. But I feel like I understand a lot about things that haven't affected me in my life through songs like this.
Well, and what I love about this, and it's my number 7 as well, so we'll just continue. Wow. I know, right? We agreed on something. Look at that, Kismet. He does like the triplets with his voice. It's really cool. But that line where it's doubled and it just keeps building, there's such signature lines in it, and then it pops back into the groove, and you do get that reggae feel, but it's more tangible, I think, for people that maybe are not big reggae enthusiasts.
All right.
So let's move on to number 6.
Well, it looks like I'm on number 6. So my number 6 is Uptight. This is a tune that could have been, you know, a Earth, Wind and Fire, Chicago, Tower of Power tune. It's just such a horns first kind of tune that really is more in my wheelhouse. This is the kind of tune that I really.
It just comes out the gate, just going boom. Here I am.
Yeah, it's just in your face.
The minute it's there, like it's no, you know what it is right away.
And then once the horn line gets out of the way,
the vocals are just right there.
Yeah,
too.
it just grooves. It's got a great pocket.
It starts with a chorus.
You know, and that's that in your face thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, songs that start with a chorus, which is normally where the hook is, just putting the hook right there in the very front. Right. And again, this is an Earth, Wind and Power trick. They started a lot of their material chorus first, then settle into a verse. Yeah. And this tune does that same kind of trick. It seems like it's kind of a pretty prevalent Motown trick in general to do a chorus first, get that hook established, and then go into the story of the verse. Yeah. Yeah.
So before this came out, Stevie had a couple of albums that didn't go very well. And Berry Gordy was actually looking at dropping him.
Oh, wow.
And I forget the lady's name. It's Mo something. But she was going to, she said to Berry, like, just give me a chance. She got rid of because he was known as Little Stevie Wonder. She got rid of the little. And Uptight was the first song that they wrote and came out with. And it's kind of what started that resurgence of his career, because it could have been over at that point, at least with Motown. So they were going to like end his contract. And he got signed to a 5-year contract when he was first started.
Right, because my notes say this came out in 65.
Yeah.
So he's still pretty young. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's hard to believe. Like
it's hard to believe someone that young came up with that tune.
Well, he wasn't the only one. Like a few people worked on it, right? And that was the thing. Like she was key in this, and there was a few of these tunes that all came out at that time.
Was it Sylvia Moy?
Yes, that's what it was. Sylvia Moy. Okay. I wanted to say Mo, but it was Sylvia Moy. And so there were a few tunes that came out at that time that were all in that kind of Motown, and I think the Funk Brothers were playing on them. But he didn't have the Funk Brothers forever, but I think the Funk Brothers may have been playing on these. And what's really amazing is that I've sung Uptight. You know, it's been in my wheelhouse for like a long time. I never realized how early on it was in his career. I just assumed it was one of the later ones.
Yeah, I have the note right in front of me the whole time we were talking about it just a few minutes ago. And I just assumed this was a mid-70s thing. I assumed this was a 10-year later in his maturity sounding tune. I had no idea that he did this when he was that young.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. So, but one of my favorites too, love that song, have a lot of memories with that song, both from Columbia College and with Chains Required. We did that, and just a great Stevie tune, those horns. My number 6 is Do I Do, which was released in 82. So I'm going back to the 80s again. And it's one that I think a lot of people don't really think about all the time. It's not one of his major, like Uptight. It's different from that. It's a different sound. But what I love about it is that it goes to so many places in one song. And truly the radio edit was a lot shorter. On the album, it was 10 minutes long.
Right.
And the thing that you don't hear on the album, so you have to go seek this out, is there's not only a part where Stevie Wonder raps towards the end of the song, but Dizzy Gillespie does a solo.
Right.
And that, to me, was like the part that just really, having that on there, to think Dizzy Gillespie, Stevie Wonder together, how long Dizzy had been playing at that point, and then he's doing the solo on this album for Stevie. It just amazing, again, the people that Stevie has worked with.
All right, that puts us at my number 5, which is Higher Ground. A 1 in a million musical awareness to just... You can assemble songs in your head and really holistically hear them without a recording. Yeah. And I really would love to know which is true for him, because I suspect both him and Prince have demonstrated this ability. Yeah. But I'd like to know more about how they do it. Yeah.
Is it just innate? Is it just how they're wired and they can't understand why we don't?
Exactly.
It's just so natural for them. Like when he's in New York and he's going down the street and he's hearing all the whistles and the taxi and the horns and is he hearing a song or is he hearing noise?
Right.
You know, I mean, like, because some people do. Some people hear all that and they're like hearing like, oh, yeah.
Or is it just ideas? Or does he just kind of get inspiration?
Right.
And it's like, I'm not like literally hearing a song. It's not quite that.
Yeah, no, but I don't mean like a full written song, but like, is he hearing like, oh, that would work in a song? Like I hear that rhythm and that's the basis for something.
Sure. I would almost imagine that has to be how he interprets the world around him. I think, I mean, I even do that to a certain point where I think about it. But I also think that for me, I was also taught how to do a lot of things. I'm one of those guys that like did study, like, here's how you play drums. And that's given me this ability to be super versatile. But sometimes I wonder if my creativity suffers because I hear what everyone else is doing and I know what does work with it, that I don't disrupt the status quo.
Right.
Like I don't think I'm not creative, but I don't think that a lot of times the opportunities in which I get to play stuff like that I want to be pushing limits.
Right.
You know, like let's do what I know works.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my point with this song, is that what I know would work isn't what happened, and it turns out to be groovier.
And I think that's with everything in life. You know, we're shown something, we're trained or taught something, and that's what's right in front of us, and that's how we see it, right? And we don't realize if we just turned a little bit to the left or the right, there's more there that we haven't seen, that's still that thing that we're doing. We just haven't explored that part of it. You know, and it's not anybody's fault. We're taught from generation to generation to generation because that's what I know, so that's what I'm going to teach you. But then there's those innovators in every generation that come along and get us to see things differently. And so again, creator, innovator, composer, Mr. Stevie Wonder. My number 5 is If You Really Love Me, and definitely has a lot of meaning for me. With the Columbia Jazz Series, having Cornelius Bumpus doing this song, he did a lot of the Stevie, right? But this song just always got me, where he would do that part where the music's going, you know, and it's on this really like upbeat thing. If you really love me. And it's like got all this stuff and the background singers, everything's awesome. And then it just all stops. You call my name. Ooh, so sweet. And that moment, like it draws you in so much. And that's dynamics, right?
Right.
And how often can that work in a song though, where everything just kind of drops out after it's already been going? You don't stop the plane mid-flight and turn all the engines off usually, right?
Yeah, right.
You know, and that's just kind of what it feels like musically, like it's going along and there's all this like buildup, and then it just like it's a whole new song for a few bars. And then it goes right back into this like sweet melodic thing, back into this high energy pushing chorus again.
Yeah. Dynamics are super powerful. And one of the books that I've read in the last, 20 years, 15 years, Victor Wooten has put out a couple of different books. And the first one is The Music Lesson. And one of the chapters is very specifically about, well, the book, to spoil it a little bit without it really being spoils, is he talks about, let's imagine that there's only 10 elements to music. And he discusses what those 10 elements are. And then each chapter is a pretty abstract chapter about how to interpret this quality of music. And the one where it's dynamics is about, if you want to get people to pay attention, play softer.
Right.
Don't play louder. Don't start screaming at them. If you want them to listen, they're going to notice a whole lot more that the energy went down and that there's just one instrument that's still talking to them. And maybe you want to hear what it has to say. And I think it's more effective as because he's a bass player, that he's in that lower register, and that's even more effective for someone operating in that sound frequency. But as a drummer, even the guys that taught me, as a boy, I remember always hearing less is more. Less is more. And that's part of the reason I think that now when I kind of say I'm not this choppy show-off player, these are the lessons that I heard as a young boy. And I think it's part of the reason that my phone rings a lot to cover a lot of different shows, is because I understand that's my role. That's my job. That's how I fit in a band. And I think that's really true for all instrumentalists. Less is more.
Yeah.
And space is king. If you want them to listen, play quieter. It's the opposite of what we think to do in a lot of ways.
Right.
And so what you're describing in this particular passage is exactly that. It becomes powerful when it's there. And I challenge you guys that are in bands that might be listening to this. The next time you want to get everyone's attention when the audience is talking over you and being rude, don't turn up, turn down. Turn everything down. And if they're just going to continue to talk over top of you, then you got a rude audience. That's okay. It happens. It's not their fault. You know, especially if you're playing like a wedding reception or something, they're not there for you. It's not your concert. You have to understand what the audience is there for. But if you got an audience that's trying to engage and it's just not quite, the energy's not right, turning up does not accomplish that goal. Turning down does. And I mean the whole thing. Yep. Turn the stage sound down, turn your monitors down, turn the mains down, isolate frequencies better so there's less bleed of, you know, like when you talk about your vocal and the guitar, you want everything in the sonic range to every instrument to occupy its correct space in that sound pyramid. And that's what gets an audience's attention. And that's all dynamic processing stuff.
Absolutely. You know, and the only other thing I wanted to say about this song was actually it was written by Stevie and his first wife, Sarita. So she helped him write the song. She was one who would help with lyrics. So she had worked at Motown. She was a singer. And
they stayed collaborators for years after their divorce, right?
For a while, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like they had a real amicable...
Wright.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. If my math's right, I'm on number 4. Is that where we're at? Oh, okay. So my number 4 is Sir Duke, which was another one of his sort of homages to people that influenced Stevie. So we did the one where Bob Marley got one, and now this is Duke Ellington.
Yes.
This is his sort of song for Duke, Sir Duke. Again, it's another horn tune. I'm drawn to those kinds of things. And it's funky. It's got a deep pocket. It grooves. It just hits all the right things for me as a drummer, you know.
Oh, you'll get nothing but love for me on this song because, again, like I said, when I heard Songs in the Key of Life, this was one of the main songs that came off of it. And I couldn't get enough of it in that horn line. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. I mean, like the whole thing. It was just so amazing to hear that. And all these names of these people that I knew were like musicians, but I didn't really know. And then years later, coming full circle to understand who those musicians were, again, added more depth to the song for me. But it was just so catchy back then. And I had never really heard something like that. Like it just wasn't something in my wheelhouse at that age. So.
And again, kind of like Master Blaster, it kind of is a little bit cheeky.
Yeah.
You know, and again, that's sort of the brilliance of what Stevie Wonder was able to do is sort of write this tune that's not really a big band tune, but it's a big band tune that can get played on classic rock radio and R&B radio. Yeah. And he found a way to cross genre in a way that worked. And, you know, now you probably hear this on any smooth jazz station, any classic rock, any R&B station. Like this is still a tune that's going to get radio play in a rotation on a lot of different kinds of stations.
Yeah. And he goes, and it's again, one of those vocals where he goes from singing to having almost a character voice, you know, when he's talking about who the artists are. And then he comes back in with that just happy, celebratory, I'm going to use that word again, chorus. You can feel it all over. I mean, and that just, you can feel it all over. It's happy, right?
Yeah. And then the call and response to the horns. You're right. It's like this.
Yeah. Yeah, when that goes. Yeah, it's awesome. Can't stop hearing it in my head now.
Yeah. But we have to because we're going to talk about a different tune.
I know.
So we're at your number 4.
Which is You Met Your Match.
This is another tune that I wasn't really familiar with. This is another one that I kind of missed. But in listening to it, and I probably only listened to it like twice because I don't even really remember this tune except from recently listening to it for studying. So what's your background with this one?
So it's part of why I picked it because it's one that's always stood out to me that I thought was just a really cool tune. And it's kind of in that line of uptight and some of those others where it's got that Motown feel to it, definitely. But it's just a little bit spicier. And it's kind of it's a love song about people meeting each other. And, he's basically saying, you've met your match. And she's trying to like kind of be coy with him. And he's like, hey, you think I'm just going to sit around here waiting for you? No. You went out with that guy and that guy. I'm going out with Susie and this other one over here. And so he's like naming you like Jimmy and Bobby. Like he's actually naming names of people like she's going out with that. And then he's like, oh, Mom, you don't know your girl kind of thing. Talking about even her mother doesn't know her that well. And it's just it's a saucy, and I like saucy and sassy. Mm-hmm. It's a saucy, sassy tune, but with a really cool beat. And I love Stevie's version, and recently found a version of one of my other favorite singers, who is Mark Broussard. Love him. He's a great artist. Okay. He does a cover of this, and it was good. Like he's Caucasian. I'm going to say that on here.
Sure.
And, we don't always have the same like feel or vibe or energy to the notes sometimes, but he comes pretty close and he does a great job. He's got that really just nice tone to him. So if anybody out there is listening for this song, check out Mark Broussard, M-A-R-C, Mark.
All right. By math, I'm at number 3, which is My Superstition. And I'm a little surprised. This isn't a crossover for you.
I knew that you would pick it.
Okay, that seems reasonable.
Like, there's no way he's not going to pick Superstition because it's just such an amazing song that I'm going to leave it off my list.
Okay, that seems like a reasonable prep thing. It seems difficult for me to believe in a real, let's create an essential playlist of Stevie Wonder that this song can't be on the list, though.
No, absolutely.
On a master list.
Absolutely.
This is the tune. This is really the, I don't want to say opus because might be overselling it, but like I think if you think of Stevie Wonder, like the first thought you have is Superstition in your head of like what it is.
Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, I could talk in great detail about the tune itself, but this is like the synonymous song. This is the one that does it. The bass line is brilliant. It's just it's a brilliant play between what his left hand is doing bass and what's happening vocally.
Yeah.
And it's a hoot to play. It's another piece of the puzzle that I think that, it's hard to say to a listener, but to the musicians that are listening, some of these tunes, when you get to play them, are just like you just look forward to them. For me, Superstition is like one of my favorite songs in the world to play.
Yeah.
And I like to play it correctly, and I like to play it wrong. I like to like it's a fun tune to play with and not play it as recorded.
Right.
As long as that as long as the bass part's still right.
Right.
Like there's a lot of room as a drummer to play within the little playground of what that bass line is.
Yes.
And it's super cool to play it right, but it's also a lot of fun to play it wrong.
Yes. No, absolutely. Again, one of my favorites all time. I gambled that you would pick it. So I'm like, I want to expose people to a few more songs that I think may not make it on our final list, but people should be aware of. But Superstition, we used to do that in Stompbox, and it was one of my favorites to do too. And we rocked it up a little bit because that was just our configuration was a little bit more rock style. It wasn't as R&B feel, which was new for me. Because I'd sung Superstition in a band when I was in Santa Rosa that we did it a little bit more funky. And I love both for different reasons. I approached the choruses differently when we did the rock style. You're just adding a little bit more angst energy to it rather than funkiness. But it's such a great song.
Well, it's such a well-written tune that I think that you can have different approaches. I think you could probably shuffle up and swing it and blues it.
Oh, yeah.
And it would still function really well. In fact, that's might be a little thing I need to just get an itch I need to scratch next time I have guys over here.
Right.
Is to try to do a swingy version of Superstition. But again, super well written tune, probably the iconic Stevie Wonder tune.
Yeah.
So that's my number 3.
My number 3 is As. One of the shortest titled songs you'll ever hear of. But it is an absolutely beautiful song. Were you familiar with this one before?
I remember, I would say I'm not super familiar with it like a lot of the other ones. You're introducing a deeper Stevie Wonder deep cuts to me that I've heard, but I am not as familiar with. And this is one of them. And As, you'd think it would be called Always, right?
Right. But I think, didn't somebody else already have one called Always? But just beautiful words, beautiful music, and it gets to a real gospel feel.
Yeah.
At the end with the chorus, and I love that. Like the whole choir's in there, and the lines that he does when he does always, and he's like just going up and down the line of that one word, but up and down the line of notes on it. It's awesome, and it doesn't feel too overdone for me because it feels right. It does go to a gospel thing, and so I feel like I'm in church by the end of the song, and so I really loved it. And one of my favorite lines is, "Did you know that true love asks for nothing?" And it's such a even as a kid, when I heard that the first time, I just thought, wow, that's so deep. One line, did you know that true love asks for nothing?
Well, and I think that's another another mark of greatness as a musician. When you end up on a stage where hundreds or thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands of people are listening to your music and your words, there's an inherent amount of responsibility there.
Yeah.
And you can use that influence to push agendas or political ideals or whatever. And I'm not saying any of that's good or bad, but I think messages like this about understanding your self-worth and your value in all the different relationships in your life is a powerful message. And I think it was a very responsible thing for him to say. Yeah.
And he's writing it as though did you know I'm going to be loving you for always? Like you said, it should be called Always. He's saying no matter what, I'm going to love you no matter what. No matter what you do, I'm going to love you. And cool fun fact on it was that Herbie Hancock played on this one. He played not only Fender Rhodes, but he did hand claps.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It didn't come up in my research.
Yeah.
So my number 2 is For Once in My Life. Again, a lot of, what draws me to the Stevie Wonder tunes, the qualities are really going to be the horns and the bass lines. And then those are like the hook things. And then for me, I start thinking about the drum parts and how those drum parts are so sort of unorthodox upon themselves, but fit so well in everything else. And For Once in My Life is another one of those tunes that's got a pretty quirky drum part. Like if you isolated that drum track and listened to it on its own, that doesn't seem like that should groove as much as it does.
Yeah.
But it does because all the little gaps in that drum part are filled by the bass parts, and they're just syncopated with each other in just a brilliant way.
Yes.
And then also to another level of the engineering. Sometimes you can write and create things where there's a good interplay between a drum part and a bass part. But if it isn't mixed and have good tone on the recording well, it doesn't come across as clever as it does sort of in theory in your head or when you're writing it out as sheet music. So this is a doubly well execution. It's a brilliantly written and thought out part, but it also is mixed and engineered. So it sounds just fantastic.
Flawless, right?
Yeah, flawless.
Yeah, no, crazy. And such a great song, and covered by so many people in so many different ways. And so this is such a big production of the song. But that's again what I love. If a song's a great song, it's a great song whether it's big or if it's small. Frank Sinatra covered this song, and he did it very much in a different way, in that, kind of lounge kind of way. And it's still a great song.
Sure.
So, but you're right, the horn parts, every intricacy of all the different musicianship that happens in that song is just, it's incredible. I mean, I just get happy thinking about it.
Yeah. It's interesting that the last 2 of these in sequence I've done have been Earth, Wind and Fire and Stevie Wonder, because there's so many similarities in the euphoric feeling from listening to these particular artists. They just feel good to listen to.
Yeah.
I challenge you to put on, For Once in My Life or September, and not just kind of it's hard to not be kind of happy by the end of it. It's like a 3-minute complete attitude turnaround adjustment.
Well, and I think it's it sounds so silly to say, but it's the harmony of all that coming together. Right. There's just so many good things happening. How do you not feel good? Right?
Sure.
It's a good bass. It's a good guitar. It's good drums. It's good backgrounds. It's good lead. I mean, everything is so good. It's hard not to feel good when there's that much good and happy around.
Yeah. And that's the hallmark of good producers.
Yeah.
Not to say that Stevie on his own wouldn't have produced amazing material
But he did
other,
help produce a lot of his stuff,
well,
right?
and he's helped a lot of other people produce
Yes.
very high quality things too. And that's another part that we haven't even talked about with Stevie is him as a producer on other people's records throughout these years,
Yeah.
especially things where he's just done a guest spot.
Yeah.
There's been, I mean, how many different albums has he appeared on where he's done like one harmonica solo? I know he's been on a couple of Stings records.
Yep.
I know he's been on, I had it and I lost it. But anyways, he's appeared on people you wouldn't normally associate
Right.
with, where he comes in and just does one cut. But if he was in the studio for that one cut, how much influence did he have on the rest of that album?
Exactly.
Because I can't imagine if Stevie kind of said, hey, maybe you should try it like this, and me just blowing it off. I'm probably going to go and at least re-record it that way and make a decision. I'm not just going to go, no.
Yeah. Well, and Stevie's first writing partner was his mom.
Okay.
And so he actually got into it because one of the guys from the Miracles, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, heard him. Stevie's mom took him to him and heard him. They took a song to him. He took him to Berry Gordy. That's how he ended up getting signed with Motown. So flip that forward, and the payback is that Stevie writes a song for the Miracles because he's part of that Motown machine of writing music. And Smokey was ready to quit at that time. And it kind of changed the course of him, like, not leaving at that moment, and he stayed longer. And that song was Tears of a Clown.
Yeah.
And like one of my all-time favorite Smokey Robinson and the Miracles songs, and I didn't realize it was a Stevie song. And I'm like, makes so much sense now. Well, my number 2 is another one off Songs of the Key of Life, which I do have to say, too, Elton John said that's the one album he won't travel without. He listens to it all the time. So that gives you some significance, too, like All the Way Across the Pond, someone else who's also a legend, and this is an album that he chooses. So I Wish.
Yeah.
Which was the other big hit off of that with Sir Duke. Those were the two main two that came off of it that were so huge. Just such a great song. And I had the pleasure of doing this one in Chains Required. And just every time we did it, loved it. That horn line, just hearing that, the energy, seeing the crowd go nuts because it's just a song that resonates with people so much. Talking about going back in childhood. And Stevie said he wrote it after a Motown picnic. It was on a Saturday, and he was at this Motown picnic, and he was just thinking of like all the games they were playing there, and he was thinking back on childhood, and he went back to the studio after the picnic and wrote it. But the words that he wrote, he said, didn't match the fun of the music, so he kind of scrapped most everything except for the chorus. I wish those days would come back once more. Mm-hmm. He went back and kind of rewrote all the verses because he wrote the lyrics, and he looked at it and he's like, it just doesn't feel right. So again, I think that's what's really great about him too, is he thinks about that. And he knew the song sounded so happy and so hopeful and such great nostalgia that the words that he had written, which were a little bit more cosmic, he said, were too heavy for it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I wish I could get a copy of what those lyrics were. I'd love to see what it started as.
All right. So that puts me at my number 1. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me scroll back up here and get to it because I don't remember what it is. Oh, yeah, I do. Signed, Sealed, Delivered. What's interesting about this one is I think this might be a tune you and I played together in Columbia.
Oh, I'm sure we did on multiple occasions.
Yeah. The guest artists that would come there a lot, that this was sort of a frequent final fanfare of the night kind of tune.
Now, did you do it with Barbara or with...
Barbara started coming after I kind of had already left town.
Okay, so you did do it with Cornelius. And
I think so.
Carl probably did it a few times too, maybe?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
But so, again, it's one of those tunes that I got to play a lot early in my playing career. Again, I love that bass line, that descending doom, 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 doo, doom, doo. I mean, it's so clever.
Yeah.
And then the syncopation of the vocal line.
Yeah.
Da, 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 ba, da, da, da. It's just this call and response stuff that's really not doing a lot of things very tricky.
Yeah.
But they're earbugs. They just sound good, right, and it works, and I love playing it, and that's why it's my number 1.
Awesome. Love that song too. I figured you'd probably put that on your list when I was making mine. I was like, I'm pretty sure since we've both been part of that one quite a bit, he's going to put that one. A lot of happy memories with that one too. Yes. It's just such a great song overall, and it's one that people really resonate with. And again, as a singer, as I've said multiple times on this show, and you can delete it out, 52 of them if you want, it's just so important to me that is the thing that people focus on a lot of times, is that music is the connection. It really is a way of connecting us. I love the fact that you cannot speak a language, but you can hear music in that language and still feel an emotion similar to what the other person listening that understands the language is feeling, because where the music takes you. Music has a way of just connecting us and bringing people that wouldn't normally be together in a concert or a show and sit side by side and look at each other and smile because like it's a great thing happening right now. What else does that? I think what's so beautiful about this and what's great about your podcast that you're doing is that it's helping people learn more about ways to connect and learn a more wide variety of ways to connect, right? So there's so much music out there, and it is such a great tool to connect us. Share music with somebody. A few years ago, I started asking friends, send me playlist. Send me your songs, because I already know what I like. I want to hear what you like. You know, and from being in the band with Lauren's big into bluegrass and folk and Americana and all that. He went to Strawberry for years. And I never went to Strawberry, believe it or not. Like, I can't believe I did. I've gotten more into that, and I listen to stuff, and he's introduced me to artists, you know, and his brother has, and some other people. And I really enjoy that. And so I implore people, like, share music with each other. It's such a great way to connect. So speaking of Scottish, Higher Ground, that's my number one. Okay. We already talked about it. But I was just thinking too, you know, talking about the power of music, Higher Ground, amazing song. It was about, his concept on it was reincarnation until I reach a higher ground.
Sure.
But, you know, kind of around a lot of different things. But just made me think, you know, music connects, music's used so much. I used to like tease one of my friends that loved baseball, and this was before I understood baseball. And I said, how exciting can a game be if you have to have music every inning just to make people stay interested, you know, bum, 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 bum.
Right.
You know, and then I learned about the sport and I was like, okay, you're right. It's really good. But, you know, funny to think about that. But think about how music is used. Music is used even in war.
Sure.
Buglers going along, like, rally the troops, you know, to bring that emotion up of like, gear up, like we're going in when someone dies, to allow you to have that sorrow, to make it okay, give you permission. When a bugler plays that song, when someone dies, or plays taps when something's happening like that, either because someone has passed or someone is passing or whatever it may be, I truly see that as permission for people who don't feel comfortable to cry, to have that moment. Here's your moment. So music helps create those moments for connection too.
All right, so we got through both of our lists. We had another crossover Higher Ground there at the end. Yeah. We're going to take a quick break and discuss what we think the ultimate list will be, and we'll be back shortly.
Don't go away.
All right, and we're back. And after some negotiation, we've agreed that we both got a number of them on the list. I think
absolutely.
I might have come out a little bit ahead for the first time. I've lost. Like with Scott, I didn't win at all. Like, we literally took Scott's list.
Oh my gosh.
And it wasn't because he was grumpy about it. I just agreed that he knew Earth, Wind, and Fire so much better than I did that I just went with it. But I think you also tactically picked deeper cuts because you assumed I'd pick sort of the hits.
Yeah.
And that might be kind of why I won, because I think I did. I think I picked more of the hits, and I just ended up on what we both agree is like the essential list.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, I'm excited for the list because it is the essential, right? But I was really happy to bring some to the table that I think people might not have realized have as much power as they do. And you coming from a drumming background, me coming from a vocal background, it's that different look also. So I love the list that we've got as the essential, and I'm excited for you to read it for everybody.
All right. So I'm going to go from the one down because that's how it's going to appear on the playlist. So our number one is Superstition.
Absolutely.
We both kind of agree that it is the iconic one. It wasn't on your list today, but you were just kind of hedging your bet that I'd put it on mine.
As Stevie would say, the writing's on the wall.
There you go. Number two, Higher Ground. It was a crossover. We both had it on our list. It was your number one. Mm-hmm. I think it was my number 5.
Yep.
So that landed it there. For Once in My Life, I think was one of mine, but another one that I think that you were sort of hedging your bet that I'd put on the list at all.
Yes.
Living for the City.
One of my favorites.
Was almost probably your number 11. And I just think it's a brilliant tune. I Wish is probably a miss for me. I probably should have had that on my list. It probably should have been taking that place of Sunny. As much as I like his rendition of Sunny, sometimes when you got such a strong songwriter, it's almost a cheat to like put a cover tune on there. And I Wish, if I had to do it over, might have taken that spot anyway. Then it would have been a crossover.
But so many people have done covers of his tunes. I love that you exposed the listeners to one that he did a cover of that's so great. So I think it's awesome that it was on your list.
Well, thanks. Yeah, and it is because, what he hears in a tune, even that tune, the arrangement's pretty unique.
Yeah.
So it's worth listening to his version of Sunny if you are into it. Uptight is our number 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 6 is Uptight. Number 7's Master Blaster, which is a crossover for both of us. Yep. Number 8, Signed, Sealed, Delivered. Good feeling tune and a song that it's probably really our musical connection song.
Yes.
From you and I from back in the 90s.
When we were young.
Yeah, when we were young. And then If You Really Love Me at number 9 to have one good, pretty ballady one.
Yeah.
And then Isn't She Lovely at number 10. Another love song, not so much a ballad, but certainly a love song for his daughter.
Yeah.
I'm really happy with this. And I'm so glad you came on and were a wonderful guest.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun to talk to you about music. I don't get to talk to people about music like this enough. And I hope the listeners really enjoy it too. And I hope it opens some more conversations for them with friends of theirs or just opens up that listening to some different tunes that maybe they weren't as familiar with.
Yeah, I can, I've got a lot of dreams about where this could go just in our community for engagement, awareness. I've thought about, well, I wonder if like a festival, if this like takes off and does its thing, if I can do a festival and feature like, a house band playing tunes from like what we did, like we just play all the number ones or something like
that would be awesome.
Just creative, fun ideas of just, people that actually have been on the show. Let's form a house band out of those folks. And we're going to play, episodes 1 through 20, all the number ones.
That would be really fun.
Yeah. It'd be just quirky, fun ideas. But that's kind of hopes and dreams at this point, but I hope you all are enjoying the content and we'll see you next time.
Good night.
Good night.